Hey guys, Chad Trofgerman here. Today's lesson is going to cover how to export movies so others can view them. There are several ways you can export files in Flash, and how you export it will depend on who you are trying to target as your audience. For instance, if you are going to embed this movie on your web page, there are a couple of different ways you can approach that, and you'll want to do one of those ways. However, if you're going to, let's say, put this movie on YouTube, there's a completely different approach to that. Or if you're going to export this for a DVD that you might want to, watch on a television, that again will be different as to how you will approach exporting all this. And so, I'm just going to go through each of these steps, tell you which way is best for what circumstance, and then you can be on your way to exporting your Flash movies. So let's begin. The first thing you'll obviously need is a movie to export. And for this demonstration, I have a very short animation I created actually for another tutorial. And it's basically just a 70 frame animation of a guy walking across the stage on an old country road. So if I just hit return, you'll see what it is. And again, really simple and to the point. And yours is probably going to be a lot more elaborate than this. But again, this is just kind of for demonstration purposes. So there are actually a couple of different ways you can approach exporting files in Flash. First of which, if we go up to File, you'll see that we have a few options here. There's the export function, which we can export a movie, or actually export an image too if we chose to. And there's publish settings in the publish areas down here. Actually, both of these will work. However, both of them have different functions that we can mess around with when it comes to exporting. So to start with, I'm going to demonstrate how to export an SWF file. And for that, I'm going to use the publish settings right here. So go to File and go to Publish Settings to start with here. A new window will pop up, and you'll see that we have quite a few options to deal with here. The Type column basically allows us to select types of files we could publish, and we can do this in one bulk sitting actually. We can actually publish a Flash file along with an exe file if we chose to, all in one sitting. But for this demonstration, we're just going to do SWF for right now. So, as you can see, an HTML file is also selected along with this Flash file. What this basically means is you have the option to export your Flash file so it is embedded in an HTML file. And what good this is for is you can then put that HTML file online, let's say on your own website, and it'll have the Flash file right on it, embedded right in it. The dimensions will be all dictated by you, and you'll have a little bit of control over it. And so that's what it's good for. However, if you just want to take this SWF file and put it in, let's say, a blog or something else, the HTML file might not be necessary. But again, let's just kind of go through this and I'll kind of demonstrate it a little bit more so it's a bit more clear. So let's just start off by selecting an HTML file and a Flash file as our types. Now if we come over here to this top part right here and click on Flash, we have a whole list of options here. And a lot of this really will depend on what kind of target audience you're trying to hit, how you're trying to keep the file size intact and all that stuff. So let's go through all of this. The first option you have here is the player option. Since I am using Flash CS4, the default player option is Flash Player 10. Flash Player 10 is the newest player for Flash. Now this means that in order to view your movie, the user will have to have Flash Player 10, which is the latest version of Flash Player. So if you are using ActionScript 3.0 in your movie, you are going to need Flash Player 10 to be your player. If you're using the more advanced features in Flash, Like if you're using the 3D transformation tool and so forth, which is actually also part of ActionScript 3.0, you will need to use Flash Player 10. But again, keep in mind, if you are using Flash Player 10, you might be cutting your audience a bit, since sometimes it does take a long time for people to update to the newest softwares, such as Flash Player. So if you have a very standard animation that doesn't have any of the bells and whistles that I just mentioned, you might be better to go with Flash Player 9 or 8, because that way you'll be able to hit a larger audience. And I also should mention, if you do use a Flash Player that a person does not have, they will be asked to download the new version. But sometimes people might not do this. So again, just something to keep in mind. And again, I said that kind of goes along with the ActionScript 3.0 stuff, as I was just describing here too. And you can do ActionScript 2.0 in Flash Player 10 if you choose to. You can kind of mix those up. But again, that all depends on what you have in your movie. Okay, coming down to the next step here, we have JPEG quality. This only applies if you have pictures that you imported into Flash, like JPEGs and PNGs and all that kind of stuff. The lesser the quality, the smaller your file size will be, and in which case the faster it will load for someone when they're viewing it online. And of course, that will diminish the quality, as this indicator indicates. And so you'll kind of have to choose a fine line between quality and speed if you have pictures in your Flash file. If you have no pictures, well, then you don't have to worry about this. Coming down here to the audio. Now, the audio again plays a big factor in the file size of SWFs. And so if you have a lot of voices or a lot of sound effects, you might want to consider going to Set here and bumping the bit rate of these files down if you want the file size to be smaller. But again, if file size is not an object, you can go ahead and bump these up so they have better quality sounds and all that good stuff. And of course, you can adjust the compression here too, from MP3 to speech to RAW and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of this might take some experimenting too. You might have to publish this a few times and listen to the sounds to see how they sound in different compression rates and different bit rates and so forth. And you have two options here, audio stream and audio event. When you are working in the timeline, you have the ability to set your sounds to either stream or event. And these two options respectfully represent those sounds that you have on your timeline. Okay, coming down here, SWF settings. To be honest, I usually leave this stuff alone. I actually don't mess with this too much, and you don't usually have to mess with it much. So I would just leave that the way it is. And when we come down to advanced, there are some things you can do here too. You can generate a file size report, which will basically export a TXT file with your SWF file and break down every single thing in the movie, which symbols are taking up the most space, or which sounds are taking up the most space, and so on. So that might be something you might want to consider. You can protect your SWF from import. If you click this, you can type in a password that will allow you to protect your file from importing so people can't, take stuff from it or steal it, basically. And there's a couple of other things down here you can look at, but to be quite honest, with the WF settings, I don't really mess with that stuff too much. Okay, coming back up here, let's go to HTML really quick. And as I said, if you are looking to embed your SWF onto an HTML, Flash will do this for you. And you have here a bunch of stuff that you can edit that will reflect what happens in your HTML file. For instance, you can choose where you want the SWF to be aligned on the document, like here. You can choose to scale it if you want to have an exact fit and so on. And you can just do all sorts of different stuff here. And again, you can actually, if you have like a program like Dreamweaver, you can bring the HTML file into there as well and export it. But for now, let's just go ahead and leave all this where it is. And now I'm going to go and hit publish. What this will do is it will take these two formats that I have indicated and that I have just tweaked here and publish them so they are ready to be shown. So, and it will also publish into the folder in which your FLA file, your movie file that you have saved, will be. So let's go find it right now. I'm just going to come down here to my Finder and click this. And there we go. Here are my two files that just exported, my SWF and my HTML. So, for instance, now, if we double click on the HTML file, you'll see that the movie is playing in the HTML file. It's embedded in the HTML file. Now, alternatively, if we go back to the Finder here, and we double click on the SWF, it'll open my Flash player on my computer, and it plays it independently like that. So now you have a couple of choices here. You can go ahead and you can upload these two files, let's say, to your web server, and then just type in the address, yoursite.com/exporting.html or whatever your file name will be, and it will play in your web browser embedded into that HTML file. However, if you're looking to, let's say, just submit this file by itself, let's say to embed it in a blog of yours, you want to embed it into an article, or you want to submit it to Newgrounds, or you want to submit it to another site, then that's what the SWF would be best for. But here's something to keep in mind as well. SWFs can only be played in web browsers, unless if you have a copy of Adobe Flash on your computer, which we do because we went ahead and made the movie in Adobe Flash. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's say now you want to send this movie to someone. You want to email it to your grandma or someone who, you want them to watch your work of art here. If you go ahead and email them or send them or put the SWF on a disk and send it to them, they will not be able to view it without the HTML file. So again, those are some things to keep in mind. But there is something else we can do in that kind of situation. Let us go back to Flash here really quick. I'll just close onto this. I'll come back to Flash. Now, let's go ahead and go back to our formats here. You will see that we have a couple of other options below here. Windows Projector.exe and Macintosh Projector. These two files will allow you to view this movie without a web browser. What happens is, with these two options, the Flash player is actually embedded into the file itself. This makes your file bigger, but it will allow you to email it or send it to someone so they can view it without the assistance of a web browser, or if they don't have a Flash on their computer like we do right now. So let's go ahead and just look at this stuff. I'm going to deselect Flash and HTML really quick, and I'm going to choose Macintosh Projector. Now again, this will always depend on who you are sending this to. If you're sending this file to someone who is on a PC, you're going to want to choose the Windows Projector. However, if you're doing it for a Macintosh person, which I'm on a Macintosh right now, you're going to want to choose the Macintosh Projector because Macs can't open EXEs and Windows can't open .app files and vice versa. So I'm going to select Macintosh Projector and then hit Publish. Publishes it. We come back to our Finder here, and there's the file right there. And again, and as you can see, I will demonstrate this as well. The SWF of this file is 28K. The app of this file is 13 meg. And that's because it's putting the Flash projector, or the Flash player, in this file, so that no matter which Macintosh computer it's on, the person will be able to view it. And again, the same applies if you do a Windows Projector file for a PC user. Okay, now let's talk about exporting your file as a video. Let's say you want to put your movie on YouTube or a similar file sharing site like Google Video or something like that. Or let's say you want to put it on a disk so that it can be viewed in a DVD player. Well, Flash has the ability to export stuff as videos. So let's take a look. Just go ahead and hit OK right here so we close out of that. Now let's go back to that export function I showed you at the beginning of the tutorial. So if you go to File and you go to Export instead of Publish and then go to Export Movie, a new dialog box appears, and this is a pretty straightforward dialog box that you've probably seen before. Now if you come down here to the bottom where you'll see that we have a Format drop down menu right here. If we click the drop down menu, we can do a few different things here. Now we can export an SWF movie just like I showed you before through this option, but you can't embed it into an HTML file, which is why I showed you the other way before. But anyway, let's go ahead and select QuickTime right here. This will allow us to export your file as a video. So go ahead and click QuickTime and then hit Save in the folder that you choose to save it in. Okay, now we have some options here. You can see that we can stop exporting, for instance, either when the last frame is reached, which is frame 70, or we can establish a time on here that we want the exporting to end. For instance, let's say we only want to export half the movie. Well, we can control that right here. So that's something to keep in mind. Or here's another option. And this is something that's important. If you have shorter movies, you might want to stick with this option. However, if you have longer movies, I recommend that you select the store the temp data on disk. Because sometimes if you have a lot of information in the movie can kind of either slow down or it can glitch in certain ways. And so if you are having troubles like that, I'd recommend switching to this option. But in most cases, in-memory should be just fine. And again, it will probably depend on your computer, how much memory you have on the computer and all that kind of stuff. So now if we come down here to QuickTime settings and click that, this brings up another whole list of options as well. You can, of course, adjust a lot of stuff here like the sound. And this kind of goes hand in hand with what I was showing you with the SWF compressing audio part. You can compress the audio in different ways. You can go up here and you can select different types of compression types. And in most cases, animation is a good compression type for Flash videos. And as you can see, I have a whole list of compression types here. In most cases, I would select animation or H.264 as my compression type. I wouldn't stray past that. You can experiment with other compression types, but for the most part, those are usually the best ones to stick with. And sticking with the animation one, you can adjust how your frames per seconds will be affected. The keyframes, I wouldn't worry about that. I'd just leave that alone. And again, you can adjust how good the quality of the movie is. Like down here, you can, of course, the least quality will make the file lesser in file size. The best quality will make it higher in file size. And the same will apply to the depth of colors and all that kind of stuff. So, okay, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to keep it at best. I'm going to keep it at 1,000,000 colors. Frame rate is 30 because I was using 30 to begin with when I animated this. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And I'm just going to leave my sounds the way they are. I actually don't even have any sounds in this file. But I'll just go ahead and click OK there. And once you have everything set, just go ahead and hit Export. And this will take some time depending on how big your file is. Mine is really short. So it might take actually a couple hours depending on how big your Flash file is and how fast your computer is. But anyway, once it is done, it'll give you this dialog box saying QuickTime export is now complete. So just go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to go to the Finder and go to where I exported it, which I just exported it all in here. And here it is right here, exporting.mov. It is 4 meg, which isn't bad at all. I'm going to go ahead and double click and then hit play. And it worked pretty good. Looks good. And again, this is for if you want to put this on YouTube or on a disk and so on. But there are a couple of more advantages to exporting as a movie compared to exporting as an SWF. So first of all, we'll just kind of break this down. SWF advantages are obviously that they're really quick, they stream quick, a lot of people can view them, you can embed them in browsers really quickly, they're pretty intuitive, and they're really easy to work with. However, if you have a very complicated movie that is an SWF, and if someone who is viewing it has a computer that isn't the fastest thing in the world, those people can experience slowdown when viewing that SWF. However, if they're viewing a movie file, they won't experience slowdown because because the Flash player isn't having to grab all those symbols and all that kind of stuff. It's just the movie file is what it is. It's basically recorded and it's ready to go, and how you see it is how they are going to see it. And as I said, with SWFs, that can vary depending on computer quality. So that's something to keep in mind. I decided to throw that out there. But anyway, for this, it's for the intent of putting it on YouTube or something else. So there you go. That's how you would export a video file. So you can go ahead and plug that wherever you want. Okay, well, I think that concludes this tutorial. And again, just keep in mind what you are trying to go for. If you have an ad, then you're going to want your file to definitely be in SWF. If you have an animated movie, you're going to have to decide, am I putting this on Newgrounds? Am I putting this in my own blog? Am I embedding it in my own blog? Or am I going to put this on YouTube? And so forth. Those are questions you got to ask before you export. And of course, going through the settings and compressing stuff, you just got to go through and make sure you're compressing what you want to compress and doing everything that you want to do. It's pretty simple. It's pretty easy to do. And with a little practice, you'll get the hang of what you compress and what you don't, and what you want in your movies. Okay, well, I hope you guys found this helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.